And while we're waiting for some of the people to arrive here, we're probably going to have about 90 something in here, almost 100 people in here. I'm actually going to go ahead and give you guys a poll if you would like to just go ahead and fill it out there if you have it on your screen. And basically, it kind of gives me a good idea. Are you using Fusion on a daily basis? So if you just want to go ahead, either slip yes or no, and we'll see here. And I see some of the responses are coming in here, so we'll just wait a little bit longer here, and then we'll start. Well, I see by our first quick poll here, 66% of you have said that yes, you're using Fusion on a daily basis. We are obviously happy to hear that and see that. And then I saw 34% of you have said that no, you're not using Fusion on a daily basis. So for those that are not using Fusion on a daily basis, feel free to go ahead and answer that one. Basically, if you're not using Fusion on a daily basis, why? So we'll wait a few more minutes for that poll to kind of come up here. And then we'll hopefully have most of everybody there in a few minutes. All righty. So interesting results. So it looks like of the people that said they do not use Fusion on a daily basis, 38% said I own no equipment, 38% said no repeaters near me, and 15% said too confusing. Well, hopefully we will be able to get that squared away for you here tonight. All righty. Well, let's begin here. We have, I think, the majority of people, and those that come in late, well, they'll have to bring candy for the rest of the class here. So good evening, everyone. My name is John Kruck. My call is N9UPC. I am the National Sales Manager for Yaesu USA. And I would like to, first of all, thank all of you for attending tonight's webinar. This is the quote-unquote East Coast edition. So we're kind of doing two webinars tonight. We are doing one here for the East Coast and the central part of the United States that wanted to do a little earlier. And then we're going to be doing another one here in a couple hours that's actually going to be for the West Coast Mountain Time, or people that could not get into this one here right now. But this is part of our new program called the Yaesu Education System, or the YES Network. And basically it's designed for us to go and kind of start to start to bring more information to you, the users, the people that are Yaesu fans, people that own Yaesu products, and kind of want to have more information on different things. We started out with System Fusion here, largely based on the fact that it basically is one of the digital voice technologies, as we're all aware, but a lot of people have questions on it. And we've had a long time since Fusion was released. We're about 5, almost 6 years into Yaesu System Fusion at this time. And last once you say the end of 2017, beginning of 2018 here, we kind of refreshed Fusion. We added a few features and stuff like that on there. So that's kind of why we wanted to do the webinar and head and do the YES Network here. So with that, once again, my name is John UPC. I'm the National Sales Manager, and I will be taking you through tonight's presentation. We're going to ask a couple things here that during the presentation, if you do have a question, there's a little question box at the bottom. We will try to answer all questions as much as possible. However, please understand that we may not be able to answer all the questions tonight. So first of all, thank you once again for attending. I know you probably are going to have a lot of questions. There's going to be some question forms at the bottom, like I said, in the box on the side panel there. That's where you can go ahead, and they're not really per se handed out to you, but we should make the box available to you for you to fill that out there for you. Questions specific to firmware, software, future features are not going to be answered tonight at this time. Yes, we did release version 1.41 as of today of the broadcast here. So therefore, I know there's going to be a lot of questions, but we're not really going to answer any of them right there. And then once again, thank you for actually being part of Yaesu System Fusion and being the early adopters. So what are we exactly going to cover tonight? So we're basically kind of cover what exactly System Fusion This is kind of going to be like a 101 class, for sake of a better term. If you know some of the stuff already, please bear with us. There's going to be people on here. I know there's people on here that have already contacted me saying, John, I'm glad you're having this because I have no idea about Fusion. I've bought a radio, I've talked on it, but I would like to learn more about it. I'm not going to turn you guys into system Fusion technicians or anything like that tonight, but it's going to give you a better kind of overall view and rounded view of what exactly is going on with Fusion. So we're going to start out the technologies, layers of Fusion, modes of operation, setup and usage. Then we're going to move into what is Yaesu System Fusion 2. What is this next generation of things, and what kind of features does it have, and how does things work and everything? And then we're going to have questions and answers as time will allow it. So first of all, what exactly is Yaesu System Fusion? It's C4FM technology. C4FM stands for Continuous 4 Frequency Modulation. C4FM is a type of frequency shift keying. It uses a data rate of 9,600 bits per second. Sometimes you'll hear that referred to as 9,600 baud for the C4FM signal on the frequency. And then we use FDMA, or frequency division multiple access, as a means of channel access techniques. This gives a little bit of advantage in some operations and basically performance of a digital voice technology. There's kind of two. There's TDMA, and that's more of your DMR. Whoops, sorry about that. The screen kind of flipped out there for a moment. A DMR, and that goes ahead and is more of a TDMA type technology, where it uses time slots, where we use frequency division. We'll show how that plays an important part in a little bit. P25, or APCO 25, uses C4FM and FDMA's technology. And some people said, oh, C4FM and Fusion are compatible. No, they are not. There are things that have changed, or we've changed in when we designed our protocol, that it makes it similar, but we've changed enough that it does not make it an illegal type or a difficult type with amateur radio. P25, you have to have a numerical ID for your digital transmissions, very similar to how DMR has it. Well, we all know what DMR, same thing with P25 and Nexten and all of them, that's not a call sign. There's no way to associate a call sign. So that's how we're different from P25. You actually put your call sign in, and when you transmit in a digital voice signal or send digital data, guess what? You're going to actually be transmitting your call sign in there, so that goes ahead and keeps you actually legal. So you don't even technically have to identify if you're using digital voice only transmissions. However, we won't really get into that too much, but just saying that, remember, Fusion is analog and digital, so you always want to try to identify and follow best practices and procedures for amateur radio operation. We chose C4FM and FDMA because it provides high quality voice communications. P25 has been around for numerous years. It's had long-standing history. It is the quote-unquote de facto standard for law enforcement and public safety communications. APCO 25 is a name that was given to it because of the organization called APCO, the Association Professional Communication Officers, I think it is, Association of Professional Communication Officers, I think is what it stands for. But they created a standard, and that standard is a common air interface. Fusion went along and looked at it, and they said, yes, not P25, but using C4FM, using FDMA, and that's why we made it the obvious choice for the protocol to be used by us. Now, Fusion is interesting. There are technically 3 layers of operation to the protocol: user level of operation, an infrastructure level of operation, and a network level of operation. We're going to dive into those in a minute. But the 3 levels really kind of are intertwined together, and you can make the levels operate separately, or you can make all 3 levels operate together. And that's kind of the cool part about Fusion, if you really think about it. Fusion can really operate on its own, or Fusion can actually operate in a network. So the flexibility that Fusion has is really amazing in that digital voice concept, because you're not tied to needing a network. You're not tied to having to have an RF channel set up as well as a controller set up and stuff like that. Fusion can just operate how you need it to, how you want it to be. And to be quite honest with you, for the purposes of the North America area, we really kind of took Fusion and we went off kind of a little bit on our own or requested features into it that we wanted that Fusion never necessarily had. And we kind of talked that about in a little bit. So this is what's going to be your user level of operation. And this is basically your mobiles and your portables, your handheld devices and stuff like that on there. That is your user level of operation. You as a user of Fusion have control of that. You can operate at that level. So if you want to talk simplex one-to-one, if you want to send a text message one-to-one, if you mode, whatever you want to do with Fusion, you can do that without a network or an infrastructure level. And that, once again, is the other part of it. And as you see, this is all of our current line of radios out there. We have, the entry level and the advanced level of radios, as you guys have probably heard me talk about. And it really offers that variety of people. Hey, I want to get into Fusion, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I don't have networking abilities, infrastructure abilities near me, those kind of things like that. So what you can do in this case is you can make a low level investment. Otherwise, people saying, hey, I'm ready to dive in this head first. I like the voice quality. I like the features. I like the radios and everything like that. We have our advanced line. And the advanced line is just like anything else, more bells and whistles and features. Now, the next level is going to be the infrastructure operation level. And this is where you're going to see the DR1XFR, the DR2X, and the HRI 200. These all have this component of extending, obviously doing what a repeater does, but then also too is the HRI 200 also offers this ability to allow you to connect out without having to use a repeater. Once again, this is kind of that interesting thing where, hey, I can have that, if there's no repeaters near me, I could put a node up in my house and have it that way. And we kind of delve into Wires-X in a little bit here. So we'll kind of just bear with us a little bit on there. And then finally, we have our network operation or network level. This is the HRI 200, and this is the IMRS. And when we're talking about networking, we're talking about strictly connecting Fusion devices together. So allowing a user in one geographical area, and I say geographical area because it doesn't need to be any certain rhyme or reason or place. You could have a person in Japan that wants to connect to someone here in the United States. You could have someone in the UK that wants to connect to someone, let's say in Argentina or the Philippines or wherever you want to do it, or you can connect across town, or you can connect 2 doors down. That's where this network level of operation comes into play. Now, the modes of operation for Fusion are very, very, very simple. Each Fusion radio basically has 4 modes of operation. And if we start at the bottom of the wording here, you'll see it will say analog mode or FM mode. That's the common mode. Each Fusion radio is 100% analog. Okay, that even means the repeaters, because with some digital voice technologies out there, when you buy into the infrastructure, when you buy into the networking, you unfortunately have to move to a digital only system. And that kind of went along against the core concepts of what Fusion did. Fusion, first of all, has to have high audio. If you've seen me on Facebook, heard me there, that is one of our main focus and goals. We always will maintain high quality digital voice audio. If we were to try to do a suggestion or something that someone wrote up and said, hey, you guys should do this, if it's going to sacrifice audio quality, we're not going to do it. And I can guarantee you that I've heard that directly from those above me, way above me, that have said, hey, we're not going to do that. Secondly, it has to be easy. It has to be simple. We don't want it to be complex. We want it to be, and as I kind of said, to you to be able to get up on the air in 5 minutes. So that's kind of what Fusion does. And then the third final part about it is the flexibility. This kind of goes into that flexibility. So if you buy a radio, you will always be able to use it on analog. The next level is the top one here, which is the VD mode, also known as DN. DN stands for digital narrow. If you look on your screen here on the left-hand side, N mode basically is a 12.5 kilohertz in bandwidth. Alrighty, we take 6.25 of that and we slice that down and we put your voice on there. That's what we do, the digital voice. The other 6.25 path has forward air correction on there. That's why you tend to Will say, hey, with Fusion and DN mode, man, I seem to hold a signal a lot further than I do maybe say in analog, that I do compared to other digital modes, that kind of thing. And that's because of that forward air correction helps on there. It does take the audio quality down a little bit from the next mode I'm going to talk about, which is VW. But you'll notice that there seems to be a lot more range with it. I've noticed it myself. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of debates, and people say, hey, no, there is no difference between the two, that kind of thing like that. So that's one of those situations where it's like, I guess that's to each his own. Numerous things are impacted by that terrain. Are you in urban versus a rural setting, those kind of things like that. The second mode is, or excuse me, technically third mode, the second digital voice mode is VW. That stands for voice wide mode. And if you look at that picture in the middle there, you'll see now digital voice has 100% completely replaced that 12.5 kilohertz bandwidth. We are no longer sending data air correction down that pipe. What that's going to do is that's going to give you far better, superior audio per se than the DN mode. It's still not going to be horrible, the DN mode over the VW mode, but some people like a bigger, almost a little bit louder, crisper audio. I know when I'm using simplex with either my family or friends or something like that, or I know if I'm in range of the repeater, I will sometimes use VW mode if possible, because it just has, to me, a little bit better audio fidelity than the DN mode. And finally, the last, or the fourth mode, which is the third digital mode, is what we call the DW mode, and that stands for data wide mode. And in that case, that's where we actually will send data down that 12.5 kilohertz. Now, this has been a discussion lately on Facebook and some other groups and stuff like that about, using that data wide mode for operation. Well, the thing is, when radio goes into data wide mode, it is in data. I mean, you cannot send voice down it whatsoever, and that is going to transmit and tie up your whole radio for the whole time. Right now, we do allow picture messaging, we do allow text messaging, and we do allow digital or telecommands through the data wide mode. So if you have Wires-X and you want to sync with your Wires-X node, if you want to send a picture, if you want to do group mode, those kind of functions, that will switch it over to DW mode on there. And that is the only. You cannot access the DW mode from externally in the radio, meaning user interface entering buttons or sending data down there or anything like that. It's specifically designed in the protocol for those certain functions that do occur or take place. The usage of Yaesu System Fusion is by far easy. What's going to happen is the first time you power on your radio, you're going to see screens like this. So the first one on the left is the FT2. That's what's going to happen. Is it's going to say input your call sign. This one here in the middle is the FTM 400, and this keypad actually to the right is the keypad for the FTM 400 that appears on the screen. Once you've taken and put your call sign into the radio, that's it. It's all you have to do, and you're ready to go digital. The next thing that you're going to have to do in order to go digital is just determine which radio you have and to put it into digital mode or FM mode. That's it. No call sign routing, no talk groups, no NACs, no color codes, no time slots, no nothing. All you simply do is just push the button and it will switch from the mode here. For example, on the FTM 100 here, it says DN. It's in DN mode. If you were to push that DX button, just push it, it's going to go ahead and change it to VW. Push it again, it will change it back to FM mode. Push it again, it will change it to AMS mode. And AMS mode means automatic mode select. So if it hears a digital signal, it'll move to digital. If it hears an analog signal, it'll move to analog. And that's why the simplicity of Fusion is one of the three core values of it. Once again, high quality audio, simplicity, and flexibility. What makes Fusion very attractive to a lot of people, why a lot of people like to use it. So what exactly is System Fusion 2? Why did we change the name and add the 2? Well, the 2 kind of focuses on it being the next generation of what System Fusion is. And there's a couple key components we changed, but here's the best part. When we changed these key components, it did not eliminate radios. Okay, so this isn't something, I've heard people come up to me and say, John, you changed the program, you changed the protocol, I can't use my radio anymore. No, every single radio that's capabilities that has even been disconnected, which is the FT1 series and the FTM400 DR. There's still the XDR out there, but the DR has been discontinued. They went along and those still operate on Fusion. We still have firmware updates for them. So there's really nothing in any way, shape, or form that is prohibiting you using Fusion whatsoever. It just changed a few things on there. So the biggest change of Yaesu System Fusion with going to 2 or the second generation is we swapped out DSQ. DSQ initially came out and it was a digital signal squelch. And what I kind of tell people is those that might be familiar with marine radios, it was kind of like a digital selective calling. The user 1 could go and select the DSQ code of a range of 001 through 126. Now, what would happen is that if I'm talking to someone and I only want to hear that other person, I could select, code, let's say 10. 010. I could select DSQ 10, and I'm only going to hear that person who's talking to me on DSQ 10. Or if the other user is using break, and break was kind of like an emergency type sort of communication. So basically, what break was, and I'll cover it here in a little bit, but basically break was designed that if you need to be able to talk to someone on Fusion and you didn't know their DSQ code, you could just instantly move your radio to the break mode and you would open up everybody's radio regardless if they were using DSQ or not. So DSQ was also able to be used by the DR1X repeaters, and many people started to really use that as the equivalent of like a CT/CSS tone for digital operation. I've heard stories about many repeater organizations, coordination bodies, trustees, that kind of thing like that. They were using that as a form of access in their digital selective access. So, hey, I only want people to use this repeater if they have DSQ code 10 again. Okay, so fine, you had to use DSQ code 10. However, once again, this issue with break came about because people were saying, and go through all 126 different DSQ if I can't open the repeater up when it's in the off mode. So I'm just going to run break all the time, and break will open up those repeaters all the time. Well, that was fine, except for here's a prime example. You have repeater A and you have repeater B. They happen to one another in frequency, okay? Meaning, I should say distance, but they happen to be on the same frequency. So user 1 is traveling between both repeaters. Microphone, he was using break, he was opening up both repeaters in digital mode. Well, he's trying to talk into repeater A, but unknowingly he's also opening up repeater B. So it's people are on repeater B are hearing this guy talk to himself because they're not hearing repeater A. So it really, the purpose that they tried to use it for, just it didn't work. So therefore, that was one of the things that we wanted to do, was to change DSQ to DGID. That's where DGID comes into play. Now, DGID stands for Digital Group Identification, and it is a form of signaling in digital voice. I have to stress this because a lot of people say it is. It is not like a talk group, okay? Once again, it could be considered like CT/CSS for digital voice. And people say, well, why do you call it a digital group if it's not a talk group? Well, correct. But if you have a talk group and you disable the talk group somehow, you're not going to hear anybody else on the radio, right? So that's why you can use DGID, or if you don't want to use DGID, you can use DGID code 00, which is basically like carrier squelch. And as you see at the bottom there, DGID has a value range of 00 through 99. Yes, there are less codes than DSQ. And the reason being is we found out that even the people that were using DSQ, there was more, the 126 DSQ codes was more than enough for everybody, and they weren't all being used. So that's why it was kind of actually shrunk down to 00 through 99. Once again, 00 is like carrier squelch, and then the other ones, 01 through 99, could be used for whatever purpose. Now, to give you kind of a graphical representation, here's how DGID would be used in a repeater situation. So you have a DR2X or a DR1 XFR that is set up for repeater operation. User on the left side, for those that could see the screen, is transmitting into the repeater using DGID 01. Persons monitoring that repeater are monitoring DGID 01, and another person is monitoring DGID 99. So what's going to happen is those that are monitoring 01 are always going to go ahead and hear the person using 01 because they're on 01. The person using 99 is not going to go ahead and hear 01 because they have 99 active. Now, with that, let me back it up here. With that, you have the ability to select a separate transmit and a separate receive DGID. So you could just set a DGID for transmit only. You could set a DGID for receive only. You could set a DGID for transmit and receive. Or you can actually set a DGID to transmit one specific code and have it receive another specific code. Now, people are saying, well, why would I go ahead and do that? What would be the whole purpose? Well, the purpose of that is kind of can come into MCOM, or if you have certain groups of people that you want to communicate with and stuff like that on there. So kind of does a couple different things. But with DGID, we also came up with DPID. So DPID stands for Digital Personal Identification. This is a unique ID number that's built into the radios and is always transmitted when you're doing digital voice or when you're doing digital data. Okay, there's no way you can turn it off. There's nothing, and it's basically like an electronic serial number. But DPID serves a lot of purposes, and for an example is you can allow for selective receiving radios regardless. So in that case, what we mean is this, and I use this a lot with my dad. We'll be going ahead, and if I only want to hear him on the repeater, I don't want to hear everybody else talking, I can set my radio to receive a DGID that isn't being used. So let me just pick 50, DGID 50. Now what happens is that he may not know that I'm using DGID 50. He just might be using 1 or 00, whatever the case may be. But when I register my DPID between my radio and his radio, all I simply have to do from that point then is just have my radio turned on onto the same frequency or same network or system that he's on. And anytime he transmits with his radio with that DPID, it will automatically open up my radio and I will always hear him regardless of what DGID that I'm on. It also allows for digital control of the DR2X for remote control purposes. What we mean by that is the DR2X, one of the neat features of the DR2X is basically telecommand in a digital data format. And so you can lock down your repeater that only radios that you have selected or set up to be registered with that repeater with the same DGID, or excuse me, I'm sorry, DPID will open it up. So you have to go to repeater, key up your radio, then register that DPID with the repeater. Once you have registered that, what's going to be able to happen in that case is that repeater will only accept commands from that radio. I have a couple questions. I'll go ahead and hit those in just a moment there. And then finally, the best part is it allows for radios to be restricted to Wires-X node operation. So since the DPID is always unique to the radio, if someone is coming in your node and they're using it or changing rooms, or you don't want them using it, they're causing problems or something like that, you can actually go into the Wires-X software, you can look up who that user is, and you can block them via their DPID. Well, people are saying, well, why don't you just block their call sign? Well, technically, someone could go ahead and change their call sign, and if we went by the call signs, they would just have to change it. So I could change it to my wife's call sign and I could still use her radio and still do that, but not with DPID. No matter what you put in that call sign, that DPID will always be transmitted and will always be unique to that radio. All right, so let's talk about how DPID would work in a realistic or real life situation. So in this chart here, once again, we see user 1 is on the left-hand side. They are transmitting into the repeater once again via DGID 1. User number 2 on the right side is receiving user 1 because of DGID 01. However, user 3, who's using DGID 99, is now actually has his radio registered with user 1. So now anytime user 1 is speaking, guess what? Now they are actually going ahead and hearing user 1. So 3 will hear user 1 because of DPID, 2 will hear user 1 because of DGID. So that's kind of the interesting part about it there. So DGID, once again, can be selected by the user on the radio and either be set up in the following formats: transmit, transmit, receive only, split, TX, RX, like I said. It is also global for operation in the radio and cannot be programmed per memory. That's kind of important, and I'll show you why that's important in a moment, but it's also because of how things can be set up in your network now with when Fusion first came out, as well as now, especially with Fusion and Wires-X and IMRS. And it can only pass through RF and does not go down or through the network level. So what this means is that if you are using DGIDs, you cannot take and use DGID on, let's say, 10 in this case, go through a network and have DGID 10 come out that other end of the network. It doesn't. DGID stops when it hits that network level. So we'll go at the user level, which is radio to radio. It will go at the infrastructure level, which is like user to the repeaters or the Wires-X, but it does not pass through that network level. And that's important to remember because DPID is always transmitted by the radio and cannot be changed by the user. It is also the same regardless of what radio's call sign is programmed in, as I said. However, it can pass through the RF and network levels and make it possible to do a selective call for registered radios. So as an example, we have user A who's located in California, and then you have user B who's located, let's say, in England. And if user A and B are on the same network, meaning Wires-X or IMRS or however they're in, as long as they're on the same network, they can actually listen to one another regardless of what DGID is being used at theirs. So let's say the repeater is, let's say, DGID 10 in California. That user in California is keying into repeater on DGID 10. His DPID is going out. Let's say it goes into Wires-X and it goes over to England. Now, and you have user B there who's listening to the repeater, but he has his set once again to DGID, let's say 99. Once again, DGID does not pass through the system, so he's not going to go ahead and hear the other user whatsoever. But because they have the DPIDs registered, his radio will open up. So once again, neat feature with DPID. So let's take a quick moment here. I'm going to actually do another poll if people would not mind here. And we'll do this one. So do you use any other digital modes? If so, which ones? And feel free to check all that apply. And we'll take a minute here or a little bit here and we'll go from there. Okay, still collecting a few responses. So everybody that uses more than one digital mode, get out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, kind of interesting to see. It's kind of matches some of the statistics that I've kind of seen out there, and we have some people that use DMR. We have some that are using D-Star, a few that are using P25, and a few that are using X10. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Kind of interesting there. Let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to continue down Wires-X. Now, let me talk about Wires-X. We did, and this is the only thing I'm going to talk about software. We did release version 1.4. Some people had issues with the 1.4 software. Other people did not. I'm going to stress to you guys here, if you guys have issues with software, please contact us directly. And here's why. A few of you contacted us directly. We thank you. It was not necessarily a software issue because we did testing on our computer and we did not see the same results. We realized that probably is a computer issue, but we didn't want to leave you guys high and dry. We did pull version 1.4 off our website. We did some tweaking. We tried to make some things more general, and we re-released version 1.41 today in order to be able to help and let everybody enjoy Fusion on there and enjoy Wires-X on there. So that's where we sit at Wires-X. I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of Wires-X here. We can get into very in-depth on Wires-X and the other stuff coming up here, but I just want to make this kind of a 101, so we're not going to cover that today, but maybe in the future. So to give you kind of a rough over idea, what is Wires-X? Well, Wires-X is designed to be a standalone node configuration, and we did adopt it to work with DRX repeaters now. So when Fusion first came out, the Wires-X device was at the infrastructure level, and at that point in time, infrastructure per our protocol cannot talk to other infrastructure. That's why, if anybody's tried it, which I know probably some people have, you cannot repeat a repeater in Fusion. It doesn't allow that. A repeater has to be standalone. The only thing that can repeat, for sake of a better term, a Fusion signal is using Wires-X. So that means you could feed Wires-X to it over the air. You can directly connect Wires-X to it, or you can use IMRS, which we'll kind of show you and talk about here in a little bit. Yes, Wires-X does require the internet. It does require UDP ports, and it does require Windows Computer. That's we've said that all along. It's been since day one. It's probably going to continue to be it. We are planning on doing some more releases for some other stuff that people know about. We're not going to cover that here. We'll talk about that at a later date. It can be used in analog or digital to cross the two modes together. So this is kind of the cool part about Wires-X, which makes, once again, Fusion part of that core concept, one of the three, being flexible. And that means that we're able to do things with it that people are not normally able to do. So you can take a Wires-X HRI-200 device pictured on the screen here, connect it to one of our 8900s or a 7900 or an 7800 or some of our older radios that had the 6-pin DIN port on there. And you can actually take and use it as an analog node. If you have an FTM 100 or you have an FTM 400, then you can connect the HRI 200 to that, and then you can use it as a digital node. But because, and the term that was kind of coined and phrased was inclusive, which I really like that term there, it allows us to do that. So now you can go ahead and use an analog node, and I can use a digital node, and we could still talk. What this does is that allows you to basically migrate to Fusion at your speed. I have talked to many clubs and doing traveling. As a matter of fact, I'm in actually Huntsville, Alabama right now because I'm going to be at the Huntsville Ham Fest this weekend. But one of the things that I've talked to some of the people down here about is that they've said that we'll come to Ham Fest from last year. They said, you know, Wires-X was great because we have our DR1X repeater. We put it into digital only mode. We hooked Wires-X to it. And then we went over here to our analog repeater and we integrated Wires-X into our analog repeater. And guess what? Now the analog users who don't have Fusion can listen to the digital users and vice versa. Now there is setups that you have to do. That's for a different presentation, but it allows you to do that. And I get a lot of questions. Will Wires-X be open up for other devices or for other operating systems? No, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. It will need to remain Windows, and we do want to keep a consistency at the level of how Wires-X operates, basically how it is. So if you look at the bottom, we did want to give you some suggested labeling because there's a whole bunch of different labels that are out there and people were kind of like, what is this? What is this? What is this? So if you have a Wires-X node and you're going to label it or identify it, a lot of people do their call sign and then afterwards it will be dash, and you can enter usually 2 more digits or 3 more digits. So what we suggest is people are going to be using it as a node. And what we define as a node is a simplex setup running low power. When we mean by low power, we usually mean 5 watts or less. So let's say you have this in your house, you have 10 outside, and you're just running 5 watts because you want to basically talk around your house and you maybe want to talk around the block a little bit. So in that case, if I was to do that, I would put N9UPC-ND. Okay, that way if I have someone that wants to connect to it or they're driving through the area and saying, oh, okay, hey, here's this thing, here's a Wires-X node, oh, it's -ND, I know it's probably low power and I probably know I might not be able to hit it if I'm a couple miles away. The next nomenclature is GW, and that stands for gateway. And what that is that's a simplex running high power, so meaning more than 5 watts, or is feeding a repeater over the air via RF. So in this case, you might have this HRI 200 with an FTM 100, and you maybe have an outside antenna running it at 20 watts so it can hit the repeater 10 miles away. Or maybe you just have it sitting on simplex and you 50 watts. That is what we would do a suggestive GW. That way, once again, I'm traveling through an area, I see this node on my Wires-X node list and it says, oh, it's a GW, so that's a gateway. So hey, I might be able to hit it a mile away or so. And that's where, in this case, it would be like N9UPC-GW. Finally, we have RP or RPT, depending on the length of your call sign, and that means repeater. And in this case, this would be directly connected to a repeater. So the HRI 200 box has a cable going directly into the back of the DR2X or the DR1X or 1XFR. So here's a couple kind of things to look at when you're looking at how the configurations of the node are. Wires-X can best be described, I kind of tell people, it's like AOL. So if you remember, you've got mail, right? Okay, you had the chat option. So you had chat of 1-to-1, okay, instant message like a node to node, and then you had the chat room, which was one into many. So in this picture here, it's a simple diagram of a node configuration. Here we have an FT2 going into an FTM400, which goes into Wires-X, goes through the network, and goes out onto a 100 on the other side in digital mode and transmitting. Now, I will tell you this, there are no pictures of computers in here. Yes, you need a computer to do that, but just because of space and representation, I did not have a computer pictured on there. This is the second node configuration, and in this case we actually have an analog radio, so an FT65 talking into a FT7900 in analog mode, and guess what? It is going through the internet connected to the other node, which is in digital. The signal goes to the radio, and the radio broadcasts it out to the FT70 in digital. Now, a room is possible. So I said node to node. Now we're talking a room. So a room is locked as a virtual location cyberspace that is attached to the HRI 200. So if you have a Wires-X node, basically an HRI 200, there is a checkbox in there where you can or cannot activate a room. Some people activate rooms, do not activate rooms. Guess what? There's no rhyme or reason or anything if you want to have a room or not. There's nothing about license clash through the world. Hey, you can have a room if you want to. Some people will make rooms because I know people that don't have, broad publicly known nets, but a few people get together. So Bob will turn on his room tonight, and then tomorrow night it will be Karen and do those things like that. So it's a virtual room. The reason I say that is because if your HRI 200 is powered on, and you have room active, it will show as the room is active, regardless if anybody's in there or not. Okay. If you have a room that is active, anybody can connect to it. And for you to hear traffic in your own room, you actually have to connect your node to your room. The node number is always going to be one higher, or excuse me, the room number is always going to be one higher than the node. So if you look at this example here, our Yaesu room is 11002, but the room number would be 21002. Right now, we've gone through all of the 10,000s. So room numbers were 20,000s. Now we're into nodes that are 30,000s, and therefore the rooms would be 40,000s. Eventually, I'm going to figure out that we are probably going to go into 50,000s for rooms or nodes, and then 60,000 for rooms. So there are a couple different things there. But once again, the neat part about rooms is that it can have a connection of different users together. So as this picture represents here that I'm showing to you, we have an analog user, once again, going into an analog radio and is feeding that room. And that room has a digital user, and an analog user. Guess what? They're all coexisting on there. The analogs are talking to digital, digital talking to analog, digital, analog to analog. It is designed to be that way. Now, to also help you understand Wires-X a little bit more, I get this question all the time. Wires-X are saying, oh, everything runs through a server, this and this and this. I want to use the sake of a better term. Think of Wires-X being a centralized verification system, but a decentralized communication system. So when you turn on Wires-X for the first time, and every time you turn it on, it's always going to call to the server, and it always will continue to call to the server. What that does is it validates your radio's there. It's the server seeing you are who you are. It kind of will pull the information from your radio saying what frequency, if you're digital, if you're analog, if you have a DGID you're using, or if you're using a CT tone or DCS tone for analog, what the name of your room is, all that kind of particular information there. Once that's validated on there, the server will only call out to the node to do updates to it. And that's all it does. It just calls out to the room to update it. When you're communicating in a room here, you are all connecting to that person's node who is hosting the room. And that's how it becomes decentralized. Because if I have a room and all of you are connecting to my room, guess what? You're connecting to my room, you're coming to my IP address to take that traffic. Now, if and Bob goes ahead and hosts the room tomorrow night, everybody's going to Bob's room. If Karen does it the next night, everybody's going to Karen's room. The reason I want to stress this is because a lot of people ask, well, what are the requirements of a computer? What is the requirements of my internet and everything like that on there? If you go to our website, yaesu.com, You go into there and you go under your products, and then the drop down you see digital, and you click on digital, you see the HRI 200, you click on there and go into the file section. You actually can get a Wires-X manual, and in that Wires-X manual it gives you the listed recommendations of the minimum requirements for computer and for internet connectivity. And here's why I say that is because your room is only going to be as how do I say performance based as well as your internet is going to be. If you're going to have poor internet, you're going to have poor room audio, you're going to have the room probably dropping out, you're going to have issues. If you have high quality internet, guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to be able to accept many more connections, those kind of things like that. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind, because I hear a lot of people that will say, oh man, I connected to this room and it was so horrible, and Wires-X is blah 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 blah. And then when I've heard that, I've kind of done some, after the fact investigation, and I found out, guess what? No, that person has said, I have bad internet. Anytime I get more than like 10 people in my room, the audio suffers. And here's what's going to happen. You may not hear the audio suffering as in like, what you probably will hear is you'll hear a lot of buffering. And buffering basically in this case would mean is like, hi, this is N9UPC. And then someone else will jump in right away and they'll be like, hi, this is N6ABC. And then someone else will jump in and hi, this is N1XYZ. And what happens is that connection, because all those streams are trying to feed into that room to be kicked back out of that room, what's going to happen is that you may all of a sudden let go of your mic and let a space in between there. And all of a sudden, someone from 3 or 4 responses ago acts like they just answered to you. So when using Wires-X, it's important for everybody to remember that you want to keep that spacing in there. You want to go ahead and you want to leave a little bit of pause, leave a little bit of gap, because once again, everybody's calling to that room and everybody's listening out of that room there. So another kind of example of how Wires-X can all be set up in there. You can have it directly connected to a repeater. You can have it all to a node radio, which then feeds the repeater, which the portable hears it. You can have it a digital. You can have it analog. You can have it any which way that you want to have it in there. It's all depend on how you want to set it up and configure it. So let's take a real quick here. I'm going to do another one here because I have one more poll. And we're going to do this poll real quick here. So if you real quick could just tell me, what do you think is the next topic you would like to see a webinar based upon? And please select one. We would just like to see one right now. So I'll let you guys do that real quick. I guess I should have added one more on there as a choice. My pictures from Huntsville. Would anybody like to see a webinar about that? No? Okay. Have to offer. Alrighty. So looks like kind of some of the things on there is kind of almost a tie for some people like to see IMRS, DGID, and DPID in depth, and people would like to see some Wires-X in depth. And we have some people that said they would like to see a DR2X, and then people are open to anything in general. So once again, thank you for doing that poll. So let's move on to IMRS networking here. So IMRS stands for Internet Linked Multi-Site Repeater System. And even though it says Internet Linked, it really is just IP-based linked. And you're going to need the LAN board, which that was a picture of, to operate this. What it was designed to do, created was to allow digital voice linking without doing the internet. So, and a lot of clubs have said, man, I'm running into this issue. They have a great site. They don't want to link with Wires-X. They don't want to do anything. They just want to use it locally and stuff like that. But there's people who prefer, because UHF has a better kind of projection pattern or radiation pattern off their repeater for certain parts of their area, where VHF has a different one. So in that case, they said, man, it would be great if I could have UHF talk to VHF in digital. Well, we got the linking done on analog, but the whole point of Fusion is to use digital voice. So before IMRS came out, you literally had to buy 2 HRI 200s. You had to have 2 Windows computers. You had to have 2 separate IP addresses. You had to have 2 ports of UDP ports set open. And if you wanted it just to privately link to one another, then when you set up in your room, you had to go ahead and basically make it set up so that it was a private room, a private node, all these different things like that, which was quite a headache. Enter IMRS. IMRS basically takes the digital voice out of the DR2Xs and puts it in data packets. And as long as you have the IP data packets seeing one another through basically an Ethernet cable or a switch or however you want to set it up right at the site, you will have the two repeaters talking to one another. You can even technically use a crossover cable and just run a cable between the two. So that's kind of the cool part about it. Now, the other cool part about IMRS when it does this digital linking is it utilizes DGID. And that is what's going to determine and figure out how you're going to steer your network or steer your system here. So we have an example up on the screen here. We have repeater A, B, C, and D. Each repeater uses DGID 1 to talk locally. So, hey, I wanted to, Bill and me want to talk on repeater A. We're using DGID 1 to do it. Frank and Carol want to use repeater D to talk on it. They're themselves, they're talking DGID 1, they're talking amongst themselves. Now, with DGID and the repeaters linked via IMRS, now, all someone has to do is they want to talk, let's say it's set up that repeater A wants to talk to repeater B, you turn your radio, DGID 10, boom. Just like that, the repeaters link up together. Let's say you want repeater C and D, they want to talk together. DGID 30, guess what? Turn their radio to DGID 30, key up, boom, it's connected. Let's say repeater A wants to talk to repeater D. All they have to do is key up on DGID 40 in this case, boom, they're linked together. You can even expand it out. Hey, if we use DGID 99, I want all 4 repeaters to link up. You can do that. Set it up. User turns their radio to DGID 99, boom, it connects them all together. Now, a couple of neat things about IMRS. IMRS is polite, meaning when you have IMRS activated, if Carol and Bob are talking on repeater D and I key up with DGID 99, it's going to go ahead and link all those repeaters together that are available. Carol and Bob's conversation is not going to be interrupted. The minute Carol and Bob are done talking, and if their DGID 99 is still being used, then it will connect the repeaters. In addition, when you're setting up DGID for IMRS, you have a whole bunch of different features, many of them too much to go into here because once again, this is just a 101 class. But as I see, this is going to be a topic that some people want. We will cover this a little bit more later on there. Need to also think about IMRS and DGID. It allows you to create a digital remote receiver site. So what you can do in this case here is that in this case, repeater A is DGID 1. Repeater B in this case is DGID 2. So what's going to happen in this case is now person A, user A on repeater A keys up on DGID 2. Repeater A is going to receive it and send it to repeater B without rebroadcasting it. So basically, once again, it acts like a remote receiver site, and then it will just continually to do that for as long as DGID 2 is being used. So this is kind of an interesting thing because really there's never really been an easy way to do remote receive sites with digital voice. Analog, it's not a problem. You can repeater as long as you got an input like a UHF channel or a VHF channel, whatever, you could throw a crossband repeater up in the other area and boom, it would do that over the air, no problem. But with IMRS, the digital voice, you didn't have the ability to do that because once again, repeater doesn't repeat a repeater, but IMRS with that connection does. Now, remember I said IMRS is IP-based linking. It's not just the internet. So you can send this IP data traffic off of any which way you want. I have personally myself experimented with using some of the ham mesh network. I've experimented with using ad hoc networks. Other people have purchased in those Ubiquiti 5.5 gigahertz dishes. Others have actually used the internet. Some have used a sophisticated mix of internet and ham mesh. I know even one agency that their public safety microwave system had space to do an IP traffic on there, and because their amateur repeaters now did not go out to the internet, it could all stay locally, they were able to have a space on that microwave at the towers that they shared. So I think that's pretty a significant kind of thing to show what IMRS can do. So this is the final part. This is the big, huge part, which is really kind of cool. IMRS Wires-X work together. They're beautiful people that work together. Okay. So in this example here, we see a user in Florida. Now, this user in Florida is going to be using our new update to turn your FT2 100 and 400 into a node, but let's not concentrate on that right now. So that person's talking in locally in Florida. They are then going through the internet Wires-X, and they're going back either to their Wires-X room where they live, or if you see at the top there in California, they're going to a Wires-X node station. Now, this node station is pointed on repeater C, which is located in Anaheim. Now, this repeater in Anaheim, there's one in Newport Beach and there's one in Long Beach. Now, these three repeaters are set up using DGID and IMRS. So now you could have Wires-X feed your IMRS-based system using a DGID that you want. So, example, maybe repeater A, B, and C. To talk locally, everyone uses 1. You want A to talk to B, you use 10. You want A to talk to C, you use 30, okay? And then you want B to talk to C, maybe use 50. Maybe Wires-X uses DGID 99. So anytime Wires-X is connected, it can then feed that system. What is cool about this, if you really think about it, guys and girls, is we've now made a system of systems. So now you can have your own repeater linked system talking, communicating to yourselves and one another. But then when you want to branch out to a different system, you want to branch out to another room or something like that, or pull in another system, all you now need is one access point, because you just need one Wires-X node feeding your IMRS based system with a DGID that's going to open them up. Here's another thing. Think about it this way. Now with this configuration, so if you had 3 Wires-X before, what were you going to do with the 2 Wires-X's? You now have the ability to link 3 Wires-X rooms together using these 3 repeaters and IMRS. That is a big thing if you really think about the steps, because I've heard numerous people say, man, I wish there was a way I could connect a room to a room. Well, guess what? Now with IMRS, with the setup or proper planning, you can link. So that's kind of a big significant thing there on there. So question and answer time. But before we do that, I'm going to submit one last poll, and this is it. Okay. And this is, would you be interested in any of the following webinars? Webinars on our VHF or UHF products, MCOM-based radios that we have, or our HF products? If people could go ahead and just quickly answer that poll. Alrighty, so I will close that, and looks like it's kind of equally spaced across the board that you'd be interested in VHF products, UHF products, the MCOM, and HF products. And that's and thank you for that, because this is what's going to go ahead and help kind of gear these presentations, our Yaesu education system, for you guys to find out to do that there. So we have a couple questions here and stuff like that that are coming up. So one question, the person's left, but we'll still answer it right away. So if you have any sort of questions, please open up the question box right now. Please go and submit to them. I'll get as many as I can. How many different DGIDs can a repeater simultaneously listen for? So that's a pretty good question. And basically, the answer to that is basically how you have it set up. So if you have it set up as a standalone repeater with DGID 00, what it's going to do is the first DGID that comes into the repeater, it will repeat that DGID out to it. If you have the repeater only set up for, let's say, DGIDs 1, 2, 3, will only listen for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it will be the first come, first serve. So if it hears 2 first, then it will do 2. If it hears 5, then it will do 5, that kind of thing like that. If the repeater does not, if the repeater listens or hears a signal that is transmitting a DGID that is not authorized in there, meaning, once again, you have DGID 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, someone tries to key up with 99, the repeater is going to completely ignore that whatsoever. So let's see what other things here. Will this webinar be available for YouTube? Yes, we are recording this webinar and the other webinar too. I will see which one of the two is better quality, and we will post this on our YouTube channel as part of our Yes Network on there, so people can see it who did not be able to get that. And we understand that some people had to jump out and go from there. have that there. Are there any other questions? If you want to type them in the chat box right now. Okay, so good question. If a radio has been locked out of a system with DPID and is sold, how can the new user know that it's locked out? So the first thing is that there is really no way as you, the user, to know that the DPID has been flagged. And for Wires-X, it's not going to be for a repeater. It's not going to be for anything else. It's going to be for that local Wires-X node. What would end up happening is that the node would not respond whatsoever. So basically, you would not be able to key up the node. You would not be able to switch any rooms. You would not be able to do anything with the Wires-X node whatsoever. In any case, that's where call the node operator, and this is why we collect some of that information. Look up their call sign and say, hey, send an email out to them. Be ham friendly is what we say, and saying, hey, my node doesn't, or my radio doesn't seem to be working with your node. Am I blocked, or what's the deal? I do know some people in some repeater organizations that their nodes are specifically for club members only, where they're basically saying in no way, shape, or form can you use our HRI 200s or this part of the network, because we pay for it and therefore we don't want anybody to use it. And once again, that's their prerogative. That's what they want to do. I guess the best way in the situation I would describe it is that if you are planning to do a club or a private only node, go ahead and mark it that way. Set it up as a private node. Then that way it's not going to necessarily pop up, and then you can give that information out to your club members and go from there. Will IMRS and Wires-X ever work on the same DR2X repeater? That's a good question. Right now, it can, and it can't. So here's how you can. You can have a Wires-X node talking to the repeater via RF, and you have the IMRS board active. If you're talking physically connected, no, there's no plans of the DR2X to do that right now, and the reason is based on design. The design looks for the data bus to either be a Wires-X device, HRI 200, physically connected to it, or an IMRS. But once again, over the air via RF, no problem. Both physically connected at the same time, no. Now, with that, let me give you the caveat. I was told, I have not had time to test in the quote-unquote lab, but someone told me I could use a Wires-X node in analog on a DR2, and you could have IMRS connected. It's not going to cross over, so the repeater's only going to send digital down IMRS and analog down Wires-X, but that is something someone told me. I haven't had a time to actually sit down and test it out there. Basically, I was asked real quick about the forums Saturday at Huntsville. Well, the Sunday one, we're going to dive in, do kind of this presentation over again, because I know there's some people that have not been able to get on here, so we will be talking about this. Saturday might be a little slightly different, and kind of go from there. Let's see what else here. Lots of good questions. Thank you very much. Trying to get through all of them. Question, doesn't it hurt the resale value if the DPID is blocked and stuff? Not really, because one of the things that is always recommended is use good ham practice. If a person goes ahead, I will give you a quick personal story. I had a Wires-X one, many of them actually, or that I helped manage, and we had a person that was coming in, and he was basically going and switching rooms on us. So he pulled our room out of the one that we have connected with our link in northern Wisconsin, and then all of a sudden we noticed there was a lot of Scottish traffic on there, and I highly doubted that it was someone visiting Wisconsin from Scotland. Sure enough, we saw someone pulled it over to the Scotland room, went there, looked through the log file, saw who it was. I moved it back thinking, hey, they wanted to play, blah, 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 not a problem. Another day or two later, I wake up and I hear a lot of UK traffic, and I look, and guess what? Someone moved it over to it was a CK UK room or something like, or CQ UK room or something. Looked at it, it was the same person again. The second time I went along and I reached out to the guy and I said, hey, I saw you move the rooms. Can you just move it back, or can you at least disconnect and we have the auto reconnect? They said, oh, okay, sure, fine, not a problem. About a day or two later, wake up one morning and I hear it's on one of the Japan rooms. Well, then that's finally when I went along, reached out to him again, and I said, listen, you did it before. What kind of radio you have? I think I could tell. You can tell by the DPID. I knew that he had an FT2. I said, here's how you do it on the FT2. Just can you do this and stuff like that on there? The guy did it a fourth time to another room. Finally, I sent him an email saying, if you do it one more time, I'm going to have to ban you. No response. A couple days later, he did it again to a completely different room. So I knew he was actually playing, and unfortunately, I had to ban him. But then I sent him an email saying, "I'm sorry, you've been banned for the greater good," kind of deal. You can also, too, just as a Wires-X note, you can block a person from moving it to another room. You just can't block them from disconnecting it. But once again, that's a Fusion Wires-X thing on there. You mentioned the HRI 200 may not be needed for wires in the future. Does this involve the IMRS feature when iOS be available? IMRS is actually available right now. That is the LAN board. If you purchase the DR2X, it has to be mounted and installed inside the DR2X board, or excuse me, the DR2X repeater. The IMRS cannot function externally outside of the DR2X. You can purchase it right now through a repeater program, or if you already have a DR2, you can actually purchase the board right now if you do that. We will be releasing more information on the Wires-X thing when it comes available on there. And any other questions here? Does not look like it. Okay, so with that, lots of great questions. Thank you very much, and thank you for attending this. I hope it was well worth your time here. Once again, it was kind of 101 kind of on Fusion, get everybody up to speed. Please feel free to visit our website, Yaesu. We are on Twitter and Instagram and social media. Please note the official Facebook pages there, Yaesu USA, Yaesu DR2X, 1XFR, and Yaesu System Fusion. Those are all the official pages. The other pages that do not say official are not official, so proceed at your own risk on their information, stuff like that on there. With that, one more question. What happened with the Wires-X without HRI 200? Same thing. We will be releasing that information at a later date. Baby steps is what we're doing. Baby steps. So everybody, my suggestion, if you want to prepare for the next updates, make sure your firmware is up to date in your FT2, your FTM 100, your FTM 400, as well as make sure that you are using the new Wires-X version 1.41 software. With that, this is John Kruck, N9UPC. Thank you very much for attending, and we will, I'm sure, talk to you later or see you on the other webinars when we have them.